Before you ever judge someone for the way their life looks, remember this. Some people are carrying storms you'll never see. Some people wake up every day and fight battles nobody claps for. And some are trying to rebuild their entire world from pieces they never broke. This story is about a man who thought he had everything under control, until one ordinary morning shattered the belief that he was okay. Not because he was weak, but because he had been strong for far, far too long. Liam had always been the dependable one, the friend everyone called, the worker who never complained, the older brother who held the entire family together after their mother passed. People praised him for being so strong. But strength can be the most exhausting mask a person ever wears. That morning, he woke up before his alarm. Heart racing, hands trembling, chest aching like he'd been running from something in his sleep. For a moment he didn't move. He just stared at the ceiling, feeling a weight pressing down on him, heavier than any responsibility he'd ever carried. He swung his legs off the bed but couldn't stand. His breath shortened. His vision blurred. And for the first time in his life, Liam whispered the 3 words he never thought he'd say. "I'm not okay." He wasn't sure who he was talking to. The room was empty. But maybe he just needed to hear himself admit it. Because pretending had finally become too loud. Liam sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, palms pressed against his face. He could hear his phone buzzing on the nightstand. A reminder of all the people who depended on him. Work emails. A missed call from his little sister. A group chat asking if he could help someone move this weekend. Everyone needed something. But no one noticed that Liam was slowly disappearing. He forced himself to stand and walked toward the bathroom. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. Eyes tired. Shoulders tense. Jaw clenched like he was holding back an earthquake. It wasn't that his life was falling apart. It was that he'd been holding it all together alone. He splashed cold water on his face. Told himself to get it together. Told himself he didn't have time to feel like this. He had things to do. People to help. Standards to uphold. But the truth? He had been running on empty for months. Every time he said I'm fine, he was lying. Every time he said don't worry about me, he was wishing someone actually would. He got dressed for work. Slowly, mechanically. Like someone performing a routine they'd forgotten how to care about. By the time he stepped out the door, he felt smaller. Quieter. Like life had somehow taken pieces of him while he wasn't looking. And still, he kept walking. Because he didn't know what else to do. Liam made it halfway through his workday before the pressure finally caught up to him. He was sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen. The numbers, the emails, the deadlines. They all blurred together like a storm he couldn't outrun. A co-worker walked by and casually said, "Hey man, you look tired. Everything good?" Liam opened his mouth to answer. To give the usual line. To put on the mask. To pretend one more time. But nothing came out. His throat tightened. His chest tightened. His vision began to tunnel. He stood up quickly, hoping no one noticed. Walked to the restroom. Closed the door behind him. Locked it. And finally, after months of swallowing every emotion he didn't have time to feel, his body decided it had enough. His hands shook uncontrollably. His breath became shallow, fast, uneven. Tears blurred his eyes without his permission. He tried to steady himself against the sink, but his legs were trembling. This wasn't sadness. It wasn't stress. It wasn't just a bad day. This was his breaking point. The moment his mind said, "If you don't slow down, I'll stop you myself." Liam slid down to the tile floor, pressed his palms to his eyes, and for the first time in his adult life, he had a panic attack. Alone. At work. Behind a locked door. And all he could think was, how did I let it get this bad? Liam stayed on the bathroom floor until the shaking slowed. He didn't feel okay, but he felt empty enough to stand again. When he walked out, he kept his head down, hoping to slip back into his desk unnoticed. But someone noticed. Meyer, a co-worker who usually kept to herself, was standing by the hallway printer. She looked up at him. Really looked. Not the quick, polite glance people give when they don't want to get involved. Her eyes softened immediately. "Liam, are you all right?" He opened his mouth to say yes. To smile. To pretend. To disappear into the role he knew so well. But he didn't have the strength to lie this time. The silence between them stretched. And that silence was an answer. Meyer stepped closer, her voice quiet, steady. "Come with me." She didn't ask again. She didn't lecture him. She didn't look at him with pity. She just walked beside him to an empty meeting room and closed the door gently behind them. Liam sat down. His shoulders dropped, the fight in them gone. He stared at the table because he couldn't meet her eyes. Meyer sat across from him. Not too close. Not too far. Just present. "You don't have to explain anything," she said. "You just look like someone who needs a minute. And someone who hasn't been given one in a long time." Those words hit him harder than the panic attack. Because they were true. Painfully true. His voice cracked when he whispered, "I don't know what's happening to me." Meyer nodded slowly. "It sounds like you've been strong for everyone but yourself." She paused. That kind of strength eventually collapses. Liam's eyes watered. Not from panic this time, but from the shock of finally being understood. It had been so long since anyone saw him without the mask. For the rest of the afternoon, Liam didn't go back to his desk. He sat in that quiet meeting room with Meyer, letting the noise inside him settle. For the first time in months. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Sometimes healing begins. Not with solutions, but with the presence of someone who doesn't rush your pain. When Liam finally stood to leave, Meyer gently placed a small card in his hand. "I'm not trying to push you," as she said softly. "But this therapist helped me last year when I hit my limit. If you ever feel like talking to someone who can help you breathe again, they're good." Liam looked at the card. His throat tightened. Not in fear, but in relief. Because for the first time, help didn't feel like weakness. It felt like hope. He nodded, the smallest nod. But it was the biggest step he had taken in a long time. That evening, when he got home, he didn't lie on the couch pretending everything was fine. He didn't distract himself with work. He didn't bury the day under noise. He sat on the edge of his bed, took a long, unsteady breath, and dialed the number on the card. It rang twice. A gentle voice answered. Hello. This is Dr. Rowan's office. How can I help you today? Liam's voice wavered as he spoke. I think I need to talk to someone. Those words, quiet, shaky, vulnerable, were the beginning of his return. Not the end of his pain. Not a miracle fix. But a door opening. In a room he'd been locked inside far too long. He didn't know where the journey would lead. He just knew he didn't want to carry everything alone anymore. And that decision, that single, fragile moment of honesty, was the first real act of strength he'd shown himself in years. A week later, Liam sat in a small, softly lit office. A warm lamp. A bookshelf filled with worn-in titles. 2 chairs angled toward each other. Not confrontational. Just air-inviting. Dr. Rowan entered with a calm presence. The kind that made the room feel safer. Without a single word spoken. She sat down across from him and smiled gently. Take your time. We don't have to rush anything today. Liam nodded, but his hands were clenched. He didn't know where to start. Didn't know how to explain. Months of pressure. Years of pretending. A lifetime of being the strong one. The silence stretched. But it didn't feel heavy. It felt like permission. Finally, with his voice barely above a whisper, he said, I don't know how to stop being who everyone needs me to be. Dr. Rowan nodded slowly. Tell me about that version of you. The one you think everyone needs. He exhaled shakily. The reliable one. The fixer. The person who never complains. Who never struggles. Who never breaks. And who told you, as she asked softly, that you're not allowed to be anything else? Liam blinked. He opened his mouth. Closed it again. He didn't have an answer. Because no one had said it. He had just believed it. Dr. Rowan continued. You've spent so long taking care of everyone around you that you forgot something important. She leaned forward just slightly. You're a person, Liam. Not a machine. His chest tightened. But not from panic this time. From recognition. For the first time. Someone wasn't praising his strength. They were questioning the cost of it. And it hit him. He had built a life where everyone was allowed to need him. Except him. He lowered his head. Voice cracking as he spoke. I'm tired of being strong. Dr. Rowan nodded gently. Good. Because you don't have to be. Not here. That sentence. Simple, quiet, human. Broke something in him. In the best possible way. For the rest of the session. He torqued. Not perfectly. Not clearly. Not confidently. Just honestly. And that honesty did more for him in 50 minutes than months of pretending ever had. When he left the office, he wasn't healed. He wasn't transformed. But he felt lighter. Just a little. Like someone had handed him back a piece of himself he thought was gone. Over the next few weeks, Liam kept going to therapy. Not because it was easy, but because, for the first time, he finally had somewhere he didn't have to perform. He started sleeping a little better, breathing a little deeper, thinking a little clearer. Not fixed, but healing. But there was one thing he still avoided. His family. Especially his sister, Riley. She was 17. Bright, impulsive, stubborn. And convinced Liam could carry the whole world. Because he always had. He never told her how much it cost him. He never told her that being the strong one wasn't a choice. It was a role he never got to step out of after their mother died. But healing demands honesty. And honesty demands courage. One Saturday afternoon, Riley showed up at his apartment unannounced, flopped on his couch, and said with her usual dramatic flair, "You're weird lately. What's going on with you?" Liam froze. This was the moment he'd been avoiding. He sat down across from her, hands clasped, heart thudding harder than any panic attack. "Riley, I need to tell you something." She raised an eyebrow, half teasing, until she saw the seriousness in his face. Her expression softened. "Okay. I'm listening." He swallowed hard. His throat felt tight. But he pushed through it. "I'm not doing as good as you think I am." He paused. "I haven't been okay for a long time." Riley blinked. Confused at first. Then worried. "What do you mean?" Liam exhaled shakily. "I've been overwhelmed. Stressed. Burnt out. I had a panic attack at work. I've been seeing a therapist. I didn't want you to worry." Riley's eyes filled instantly. "Liam, you idiot," as she whispered, voice cracking. "You think I don't want to be there for you? You think I only want the strong version of you?" He opened his mouth. But she cut him off. Tears falling now. "You've been taking care of me forever. Let me take care of you too." Liam felt something inside him break. A wall he didn't know he'd built. She leaned forward, wrapped her arms around him, and held on tighter than she ever had. And for the first time in years, Liam didn't hold back. He didn't pretend. He didn't swallow the emotion. He hugged her back and let himself cry. Not out of panic. Not out of fear. But out of the relief of finally being real with someone he loved. After that conversation with Riley, something shifted inside Liam. Not dramatically. Not like a movie scene where everything suddenly gets better. It was quieter than that. Gentler. Real. Because for the first time, he wasn't trying to heal in secret. Riley checked in on him. Not obsessively. Not like he was fragile. But with small things. "Did you eat today? Want me to come hang out? Proud of you for going to your appointment." Little reminders that he wasn't carrying everything alone anymore. At work, Meyer became an unexpected anchor. Not by prying. Not by treating him differently. But by offering small, consistent kindness. A quiet "how are you feeling today?" A coffee placed on his desk without a word. A smile that said, "I see you, not the mask, you." Sometimes that's all a person needs. One friend who notices the weather inside you, without you having to explain the storm. Therapy began to uncover things Liam had buried deep. Old grief. Old expectations. Old fears he thought he'd outrun. It was painful, uncomfortable, messy. But every week, he walked out of that office a little lighter. Not because the weight suddenly disappeared, but because he finally stopped carrying it by himself. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, life began to open for him again. He started taking morning walks before work. He began journaling. Short entries. Just enough to get the noise out of his head. He even turned down a few favors from people. A thing the old Liam would have never dared to do. He didn't feel strong again. Not yet. But he did feel human. And that was new. One evening, as he sat on his balcony, watching the city wind down, he realized something he had never allowed himself to believe. Healing doesn't look like getting back to who you used to be. It looks like becoming someone you deserved to be all along. Someone who rests. Someone who asks for help. Someone who is allowed to break. And allowed to rebuild. And for the first time, Liam felt a quiet sense of hope. That maybe, just maybe, he was finally becoming that person. Healing isn't a straight line. Liam learned that the hard way. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of day that felt ordinary. Harmless. Routine. He woke up feeling okay. Not great. But steady. Steady was enough. But by noon, everything began to unravel. A project at work went wrong. A client blamed him for something he didn't do. His inbox filled with messages demanding things he didn't have the energy to give. And then, the final hit. He got a text from his aunt. "Can you come help this weekend? Riley told me you've been stressed. You're the strong one. I know you can handle it." Those words. The strong one. They hit him like a punch to the chest. All the progress he'd made. All the boundaries he'd started building. Suddenly felt paper thin. By the time he got home. The weight of being the strong one. For everyone. Crashed down on him again. His hands trembled. His breath shortened. Not a full panic attack this time. But close enough to scare him. He sat on his kitchen floor. Back against the cabinets. Feeling like a failure for falling backward. All that work. All that progress. And one stressful day. Made it feel like he was right back where he started. He buried his face in his hands and whispered, "I thought I was getting better. Why does it still hurt like this?" It was the kind of moment that could have pulled him under again. But then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Meyer. "Hey, just checking in. Don't forget that one hard day doesn't erase everything you've climbed through." He stared at the screen. Tears blurred his vision. Then another buzz. Riley this time. "Love you. You don't have to be strong tonight. Come over if you want." Two people. Two reminders. Two lifelines. He breathed. Slowly. Carefully. Pulling himself back from the edge. Inch by inch. He wasn't okay yet. But he wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference. He stood up. Grabbed his keys. And walked out the door. Not to run away. But to go somewhere. He wouldn't have to pretend. For the first time. A setback didn't destroy him. It reminded him that he was still healing, still learning, still growing, and that progress doesn't vanish just because pain returns. A few weeks later, Liam sat in his favorite coffee shop, watching the city move around him. He had a notebook open, but he wasn't writing. He was thinking about the last few months, about everything he'd endured, about the walls he'd built and slowly torn down again. Riley was sitting across from him, sketching in her own notebook, chatting lightly about school and friends. Her presence was comforting, but she didn't push him, didn't demand answers. Just there. Safe. Steady. Meyer had sent him a text earlier, asking if he wanted to meet for lunch tomorrow. He smiled. For the first time in a long time. He actually looked forward to it. He thought about therapy, about how terrifying it had been to admit that he couldn't do everything alone. And yet, he had survived. He had truly survived. Because he had allowed himself to be helped. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the sounds around him. The low hum of conversation, the clinking of cups, the soft patter of rain on the window. And then he realized something. Healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about becoming someone who finally allows themselves to be human. Someone who accepts help. Someone who embraces vulnerability. Someone who can let go of the impossible burden of always being strong. He opened his eyes, looked at Riley, and felt a profound sense of peace. Not because everything was perfect. Far from it. But because he had finally taken back his life. He had survived the storms. He had faced his fears. He had let people in. And that, he realized, was freedom. He smiled, genuinely this time. Not a mask, not a performance. For the first time in years. He felt whole. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't facing the world alone. It's asking for help. It's letting someone see your pain and trusting that they will stay. If you've ever carried the weight of the world on your shoulders, remember this. You don't have to. Healing is messy. It's slow. It's real. But it is always possible. If this story touched you, drop our E1E in the comments to show you stayed until the end. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what it means to be human. Sometimes, freedom isn't about escaping life. It's about letting life catch you when you finally fall.